in our community, a lot of times there's a pressure to have kids quickly, fast, and many. And so I think even with that type of mentality, when people have postpartum depression, it has already started because there's already been so much pressure. Motherhood doesn't have to be rooted in struggle.
Welcome back to another episode of Emo Talk Show, where everything is uncomfortable, all right? If you're part of the family, thank you so much for coming back. But if you're new here, my friend, what have you been doing? You know, this is the place to be. All things uncomfortable, but yet necessary. So please continue watching us today. On our show today, we'll be talking about postpartum depression, a topic that I'm very passionate about. And I have someone here who's very passionate about it. We'll talk just a little bit more about what that is. But before I do that, I want to introduce you to my beautiful guest. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Dina Bisalo Bulumbu Chukwemeka. I am Congolese born, but mostly raised here in the U.S. And I came to the U.S. when I was 5, but proudly African. I've always been very proudly African. And I am a mother, I'm a wife, I'm a career coach. I always say I'm multifaceted. There's different things I do. I am a this and not but, so I'm not limited by any titles. I can do it all, maybe not all at the same time. And so being a newer mother, I have 2 kids, 3 and 15 months. This conversation about postpartum, not just the depression, but postpartum as a whole, how we take care of ourselves as women, how we accept help is very important, especially for African people, because there's a way African women are perceived to be mothers and what that looks like back home versus today. And so there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to have you. And for those who don't know, the time when you have a child, it's supposed to be a time of like happiness, of joy. Like it's a time when everybody probably you've waited for, people in your life have waited for. And so you're just super, super excited. But also it can be very nerve-wracking because it's a new thing, right? It's a new experience. And so just like going into a new job, it's like that. You get nervous, you get anxious. And so today I just want to talk about like, what is postpartum? Like if I were to ask you what it is, what could you tell me about it?
It can last longer. It can be varied. It's the time after you've had a child. And so depending on, I think sometimes we're so stuck on, is it 6 months? Is it 6 weeks? It's different for everybody, and I don't necessarily like to argue about what is the time for it, but what are we doing after we have a baby, and more importantly, what are we doing before we have a baby? That contributes to, I think, what we see postpartum depression. What I'll say here is, in our community, a lot of times there's a pressure to have kids quickly, fast, and many. Right. And so I think even with that type of mentality, when people have postpartum depression, it has already started because there's already been so much pressure about what it means to be a mother, what it means to be a woman and a mother and a wife, and all of the things that happen after you have the baby.
Okay. So the depression part, what would you say are some like symptoms of like, what does that look like? And I know for sure, just like anything else, it probably looks different for each person, but what are some symptoms that women can watch out for?
It does look different for everybody. And I'm talking about it truly from a mother standpoint and not a medical standpoint. I remember after the 6 weeks, you go to your OBGYN, they ask you questions. Are you sad often? Have you thought about killing yourselves? You know, these are questions they're asking to assess, but it doesn't always appear in that way. A lot of times our bodies can be also telling us things that we don't know. But I think what they define it like chronic sadness or chronic, like you're always down or maybe crying or maybe you're not sleeping. A lot of depression is triggered by little sleep. And when you got a new baby, you're not really sleeping. So there's different signs. I would say a lot of it is around thoughts of killing yourself, thoughts of killing your baby, those type of things. But sometimes it's not even that extreme. I think sometimes people are like, well, I'm not feeling like all the way over there, but sometimes I
Yeah. And maybe you're not taking care of yourself as much as you should. You're worried about your baby often. Like, what if something bad happened to my baby?
Right. And even taking care of yourself when you've had a baby is tough because you got a whole new baby to take care of and keep alive. I mean, you're worrying about breastfeeding, feeding them in general. You're worried about their sleep. I mean, you're also healing, whether you have C-section or vaginal birth. There's so much going on, right? And so simply, that imbalance of emotions, giving birth, having a new baby. I mean, I know a lot of it, we could say everybody has a form of postpartum, right, depression. I don't embody the postpartum depression label for myself, but even though I had help around, there was times I was like, wow, this is a lot. Wow, I feel overwhelmed. Wow, I feel sad. I love my baby, but this is a lot. I'm tired. Yeah. So I think it's just, people need to more understand what happens when you're pregnant and you have a baby. The transition, like you said, is quick, right? Motherhood is one of those, you get the title before you know that you can do the work for sure. So that transition, you don't have time to marinate in that change. You don't have time to prepare for that change.
And being in the African community, like when you have a newborn baby, I've never had a child myself, but I have siblings who have kids. And I know like the whole pressure of like everybody telling you how you're supposed to care for your child.
Look.
And like,
do we have time?
this is what you're supposed to do. And if they're crying like this is what's happening. I think that like sometimes women or new mothers feel like they're insufficient.
Yeah.
Like they're not enough for their kid. They're not enough for their husbands. They're not enough for their mother-in-law. And so, yeah, I haven't seen, and I tried to ask my mom. She had 8 of us. And I was like, Ma, did you ever like experience this and that and that? So I gave her some symptoms. I was like, did you ever go through this? And she was like, not that I can remember, but I was like, after 8 children, I'm pretty sure you went through it. You just didn't know.
Yeah, sometimes we forget, unless, there's a cultural context and upbringing and all of that. But a lot of times I think even our parents or our parents' parents, they just weren't as conscious with it, because our parents had kids every 2 years and you've been pregnant for 15 years. I mean, that's a lot. It's a lot on the body. It's a lot on the emotions, right?
You get immune to it too.
Yeah, probably. And it's just, it's different. And I think we have the privilege of being where we're at in the time that we're at, where we kind of have some more time to think. It's not so much survival. Yeah. We're thinking about these things because we have the ability to. They were trying to feed the kids. There's other things going on. So it wasn't so, I think, in their face to think about, do I feel sad? How do I feel about my baby? I mean, they weren't thinking about it like that. And a lot of times they were told not to think about it like that. Right. That's one of the things I think I wrote down was, we can tell the truth about being pregnant and even motherhood and that transition without scaring people. We just need to have honest conversations, but I'm not telling you so you can be scared. And there's a way, as the person who's done it, the intent shouldn't be to scare you. The intent should be to give you some visibility. But like you said, pressure on do this for your kid, do this. One thing I realized early on was I need to get comfortable listening to my own instinct, my own motherly instinct. And it doesn't always come. Many times you have to learn what that even sounds like. So if you have too many voices telling you how, you don't learn to also be a mother on your own. Right. And so I think
this is your personal experience, not theirs.
Personal experience. And I realized that even now raising my kids a little different than I was raised. It's like, this is what I'm doing. You know what I mean? It's a choice that I'm making.
It's my turn, and this is my gift from God.
Yeah. I take all the wisdom of people I see, and I also leave what I don't want to take. You know what I mean? Because just because you've had 10 kids, there's a lot of women who've had 10 kids and may not be the quote unquote good mother. The number of kids you have doesn't
equate to how good you were at parenting.
It doesn't.
Yeah. So like I was saying, this is an issue that impacts women all over the world. And medically speaking, like Africa, let me go back. Not Africa. Women in rural Africa do not have the access to the medical help that they need, right? And so when a woman back home gets hammered with postpartum depression, first things first, my question is like, do they recognize what's happening to them? And if they do, are they going out to seek the help? And then I also want us to think of like, what does that look like when we are here in the diaspora, our mothers recognizing what's happening to them, what's happening to their body, and are they asking for help?
Yeah, I think it's complex for back home because you're talking about help that's not physical. you're dealing with postpartum mentally is not you. It's not a physical shot you'll give someone and all of that. A lot of that, yes, there's some imbalances in medication people can take, but a lot of that is around expectations, pressures, help with children. It's different. So I know what you're talking about, but it's hard to talk about it from where do they seek help? Because we know, I mean, most people are being told they're crazy or, just get it together. You're a mother. You can't do this. You can't, so I think it's a little bit tough. And then for mothers who have come, our mothers, I heard something just yesterday and it said, we can't take on issues that are not our issues. And that's the reality of that. A lot of our mothers it may never come for them to even think about the effect of what happened years ago on them today. I think some of our parents are definitely trying, but as much as we think we can change them and get them we can't do that. But what we can do, I think, as diaspora children is continue to show our parents in the work we do for ourselves how that might show up. Because I've been surprised to even hear my grandma would say or my mom would say, oh, I never thought about it this way. Or I never even considered that when I had you, because they didn't. It's a lot of other things going on, but it always starts with us, right? And let them see. Sometimes we're trying to over push, get this, look at us. And I think that also puts the idea of because we're in America, things are better. And it's not. But for them to have that conversation is not so easy. And I think there's a grace we have to have there. That it's hard to have those conversations because some people went through very tough things. I've heard women talking about their C-section or after even having vaginally, they'll put hot water. I mean, there's things we used to do that we know we shouldn't have done, but they've already suffered that thing, that trauma. But it's hard for them to also talk about it, right? And so the work we can do is the work we do with ourselves and what we're doing right now.
Yeah. So for women who are here, like let's say young adults who were raised in the States, are we also seeing that they are repeating that same pattern where like they're not asking
I believe
for
so.
help?
Yeah, we do what we see. I think we play out definitely what we see, and that's another level of work that we have to do. And even the studies already show Black women as a whole already deal with that a lot more. We're talking about economic imbalance. We're talking about single homes, right? That all also contribute to that going back to work after 4 weeks. There's so much in that conversation. And the only way we don't repeat it is by getting the tools to help us do that. So one of the things I really wanted to highlight was like for postpartum, like before it was like, oh, you're a mother, you'll figure it out. But guess what? Sometimes you don't know. Even if you have help, you need to build your own toolbox. So one thing I've started gifting people is parenting classes, because it's like, have you thought about how you parent or how you've been parented and how that looks like and how you're going to do it differently? There's also things I've done like postpartum kit. I put books, I put, gift cards. I can make food for people. There's different ways to help with postpartum that is mental, but you can also meet people where they are, because a lot of African women are not going to ask for help. Black women are not going to ask for help because we feel like we have to do it all.
And even if they ask for help, help when it comes to like anything behavior, even in the States, like it's really hard to get that help, right? It's expensive. And I think like most of the time, like we'll talk about like, well, people should be going to therapy. And it's like, well, not everybody has the money to be able to do that. And health insurance doesn't cover anything in the behavior. So it's like, this is what we're telling people to do, and this is what's good for them, but it's also not very accessible, right?
Yeah. And I'll put a pin here to say, a lot of times we are looking at what don't I have, but what do you have? Do you know how many therapists on Instagram? Now, some of them may be good, bad, whatever, but do you know how many therapists are giving out free ways, questions, conversations? Like, I get it. I'm never against realizing the systemic ways which keep people from access, right? But I'm also always on the end of what do I got? Because I always like, what did God give you? What do you have access to? Don't tell me in this phone you can't find something. There's information literally at our fingertips. So for we diasporas, we know where we came from. Our parents too struggled to bring us to where we are, right? So I really always challenge our community. Stop looking at what you don't have. What do you have? I mean, literally, what do you have? I can tell you 10 accounts on Instagram you can follow. There's questions you can dig into. Postpartum, people talking just postpartum. So you don't need to spend $150 to go to a therapist. If you can pause and do some of that work on your own, because let's be honest, the therapist is a vessel just to help you, but you still got to do the work. That's the secret.
Right.
You still got to do the work. When you talk to your therapist, they're not there to tell you what to do. They're going to ask you the same questions, and you still have to process it yourself. Yeah. So with postpartum and we being here now, that's our work. It's our parents did their thing. They passed the baton. Now it's our turn to also figure out what this looks like for us.
Right. Could you speak on like parenting here versus back home? I know that like as Africans, we're a collective society, right? When we're back home, we had our grandparents, we had our uncles, our aunts, our cousins, all in the same compound. I grew up like that. And so like when we first came to the US, it was such a big challenge for my siblings and I, because it was like, you go to school, you come back home. Yeah. You go to school, you come back home. Yeah. And like, you didn't really have anybody. So like, how does that look for a woman who's, let's talk about a first time mother. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What does that look like for her?
I mean, is she married or she's not married? Because I think that also looks different.
Let's say she's married.
Okay, because it looks different. And I think I don't remember her name, but she was attacked because she got a postpartum night nurse to help her, because she, for nighttime, because the reality is we're not all by our families, and people attacked her. Oh, why did she do this? She's a mother. And it's like, we need community. We need community. I have a quote here because as I was preparing for this, it's like, motherhood doesn't have to be rooted in struggle.
Right.
That's why I'm using African broadly, but I love our culture where it does take a village. And I've been so blessed to have a village. I have my mother, my grandma, my mother-in-law. I've had a village, right? And that helps, right? And I wish we would replicate that goodness that we have of the village, raising a child, and also nurture it here in America. Because daycare is expensive, bruh. I mean, daycare is expensive. You're talking $1,500, let's just say $800 to $1,500 a month for one child. So what will you start?
And where's that money?
And that's why a lot of women leave the workforce, because it's like, I mean, if I'm going to be paying that for daycare, I might as well stay home, right? And then that creates a discrepancy between paying and all of those, how wages and all that. But I would love for us to look for a way to replicate that community village here in the best of ways, right? Because let's be honest, not everybody parents the way maybe you want to parent too. Like they know in my household, I don't do corporal punishment. I don't do spankings. I don't do it. And I wasn't even spanked. And I remember I used to always be told, oh, you're spoiled, you're not spanked. And I remember even lying, like, I do get spanked, because it's a cultural thing to think if you're not spanked, you won't act right.
Right.
There's unpacking to do right there. People need to, and I won't get into the debate of spank or no spank. That's for y'all. But for me, no, because I'm doing it. And I wasn't. And I turned out great. I always tell people, I feel like I turned out fine. I turned out very great. Some people think they turned out fine, but they're triggered. They got trauma,
I like that you were talking about like using the village, like replicating what we had back home to here. And there are people who will say stuff like, oh, I don't want to be near my mother-in-law because I just don't want to deal with that mother-in-law drama or whatever. But I'm also the type of person that I think like you can only be around what you are, right? And if like people in your family are dramatic and you involve yourself in it, you're also dramatic. And so replicating that village is you saying, okay, for my child, right? I want my child to be around a community. I want my child to have people that can help raise him in the best way possible. And it's also like building boundaries and telling people how you want to raise your child, right? Because if you go ahead and you're living with someone, or like you live nearby them, you leave your child with them, and they're doing certain punishments that you don't want your child to experience, you can't just come back at home and like be mad at your husband. Oh, see what your mother was doing. She's also your mother. So like have open conversation and just say,
and that's before you have the kids. That's why I was saying, like,
this is not what I want.
How are you parented? What type of parent are you going to be? You have a spouse, talking about those things, because you have to know before, about, you can't set a boundary that you haven't thought about and put the boundary around, right? There's things, my parents know hey, we don't do like this, we don't do like this, right? And I think when you set a boundary and people, look, some people love you and they may still not want to give you that boundary, but you're the mother. You have to decide then, are you gonna, there's so many hard choices in parenting, and it's not so clear cut all the time, but.
Yeah. And then my other thing is about like that village, right? The people that surrounds you. I think to those people, I'd like to say that, like, if you see that, a person that let's say they are your sister, they're your cousin, they have a child, and you start to notice that, like, they feel like they're not enough, or they feel guilty that they're not going to be a good mother to their child, or they've gotten to the extreme of like, they don't want to bond with their child, right? I think it's really important for the people in your life to hold you accountable to your own health. That like, hey, Tulia, I think like something is going on here and we need to like take care of it. But when that village, because I've seen it where the village is what hurts you the most. Yeah. You come open and you tell them this is what I'm struggling with, and they'll tell you, hey, I had 10 children. What can you tell me? And it's like, your experience is not my experience. Your body is not my body. We have two different bodies. So it's just really important for the village to be there for one another. If it's the mother-in-law, if it's the sister-in-law, look out for them, because at the end of the day, this is the mother of your nephews, and if she's not here to take care of them, could you really take care of those kids?
And I think that's where people get to like the good old days, though. I'm not on the good old days thing, because I think things are always better. But we should be always better. But I get this idea of maybe the accountability that the village can have for the family, for the community, right? Like, we can correct each other. I just don't think we always have that. And how does correcting look like? It's complex, right? You have to, sometimes the village you build may not include your family. When we lived in Memphis, we were very far from family. We had to look, by God's grace, we found a Nigerian grandma who we were able to pay, right? Well, she's not family, but if someone we could send a child to. When she started daycare, well, they're part of our village. We tell them our hopes and dreams, and so sometimes you got to build a village like that. I know a friend who has 2 kids, who's a single mother, and she builds a village with her friends, her coworkers. So you have to build that village. And I think, right, you don't have to just feel like it's only your family. Yeah. Because there's some family you may not want. Blood, right? Family is not just blood, right? And so the blood is not always thicker than water. I'm sorry, that quote is not. It's so wrong. It's just I'm not going to talk about that. Right, unless we talk about blood of Jesus. But besides that, I don't know. Blood is not always like that. Yeah. So I just think, that village and what that looks like. And I know it's a vulnerability. Your mother-in-law, there's people, but from what I've experienced for myself, that I would want everybody to experience is a respect that you can have with your in-laws, where you can balance. And Nigerians do what they do, omugo, which is, your mother-in-law will come for 3 months. And my mother-in-law stayed with us over 6 months, right? So I'm always very aware of the privilege that I have, because we've been able to do more because of that. And even though there's been times where you always butt heads, because you're different people. We're different, but guess what? When you have respect, she respects me when I say like this. I respect that. Okay, she has mothered 8 children. Where can we be in the middle? A lot of times we're mad at people, and it's like, have you had a conversation? Not just, oh, stop, don't do that. And have you had a conversation?
Have you like looked at it from their perspective? Yeah,
because they know something. There's some value there. But I remember someone saying, if we would actually talk to each other, there's so much power, because yes, some of their things may seem outdated, but they have wisdom that we don't yet have. But we also have a progressiveness in our thinking that when we meet it together.
There's so much
So this
power in
idea
it.
of village, let's take the best of what we have learned as diaspora and what they have known instinctively and make it work. We can make it work.
I definitely agree with everything you just said. I really, really do. And so to the young mothers out there that's watching this video, I think that to me, what I've seen in my experience, and this may not be for the same for everyone, right? What I've seen is that people who get married young and go into a new family, they go with this mindset that like, I don't have to listen to you.
Yeah.
And that is so wrong. Like everybody to get to, everyone to get to the point where they are in life, they've learned so much. And so like, even if it doesn't work for you, it worked for them. And like, what can you use? Like you said, what can you use from what they're telling you and what you have, your own motherly instincts? Yeah. How could you put that together to make it work for your child? Yeah. And at the end of the day, everything is about the generation that you're bringing in, because those are your gifts.
You know, I'm just so passionate about why I'm so like about even the parenting is like such a thing for me now is because the word like to be blessed with a child and then to steward this child. I'm not here to control you or make you like me or make you even do what I want you to do. The responsibility of stewardship, like it's like this child is like, you're here as an ambassador, right? Yeah. To help them to gain skills, to do life. It's not about them doing what, I'm not here for them to be their military surgeon. Yeah. You know what I mean?
And the other thing that I've seen with African women, especially the older ones, and then we become it and we pass it down. Yeah. And it's this thing where it's like, you think you're the best mother and that this person is doing a horrible job.
Yeah.
Like you're always trying to push your parenting style on another person. Yes. And like you have to realize that this is not you. Mm-hmm. This is a totally different person from you. And so like, man, whenever I see that, I saw my sister go through that and I remember like how she would get so mad. Mm-hmm. She'd be like, if I say anything right now, I'll sound disrespectful. If I say anything right now, I'll sound disrespectful.
But when you're a mother, it's also owning your motherhood, right? And being comfortable with that. And I think a lot of times, yes, it's like, someone wants you to do something the way you want it, and you got to stay firm on your own. And I think you can do it gently. Like me, I'm a stickler for nap time and bedtime, but I've heard all the years, don't do, let them sleep late, let them do this, or even breastfeeding. Don't feed them to that. All of it. There's so many opinions, but guess what? This is what I'm choosing to do. And if it's wrong, I will learn, I will adjust, but I have to build my motherly instinct. It doesn't just come. It's not a light switch. Right. Until you're making decisions, right? You don't learn to hear yourself and trust yourself. So you have to be willing to be like, this is what I'm doing. Thank you, but this is what I'm doing. And it doesn't have to be rude.
You do have to listen to your inside. You have to also listen to the emotions that you're feeling, right? And you want to seek help or to ask other people what they think about what you're going through. If you don't sit down and question yourself, what is it that I'm feeling? What is it that my body, my mind is going through, and process that on your own first, because we can only be led blindly if we don't sit and have a conversation with ourselves. Yeah. Go in the mirror, look at yourself and say, am I what I want to be? Am I parenting the same in the way that I would have wanted my mother to parent me? Am I standing next to my child the way I should be, like what's the word? Am I supporting my kid the way I would have wanted my parents to support me? And that's something that young African mothers really have to do, because our parents, they parented us on a survival mode. That was different from what we have now. And so we have to be able to ask ourselves, like, am I doing what's best for my child? If I was my child, would I like me right now? And I know that you talked a little bit about like the support that women can get on and offline. Yeah. I want you to just emphasize that on a little a little bit more, because I think people think that like, oh, my mother-in-law isn't here. My mother isn't here with me. I really don't have any help. I don't have any support. What is it that you can tell those women?
Yeah, I've always joined mom groups, and it can be crazy. You have to sometimes pick and choose. But even now, I'm part of my breastfeeding group. I'm still there. I'm part of a mom's group. I'm even just joined a paid parenting moms group, because I'm like, we pay for college, we pay for all of these things, but when it comes to things that college matters, but I'm talking like things that really matter, like parenting. Why don't we feel like we can pay for those things to learn? Why don't we feel like we should be reading books about parenting, child development? None of us know how child develop, and then we're here mad because they're having tantrums. Every child has tantrums. Very normal. It's part of actually growing up, right? So find those groups that help you see some perspective, different ways of thinking, different ways of even talking to your child that you can test out. If you have a church community that you trust, and find those people, usually people around the same age are having kids. You can support one another. Hey, can you take my child this, 5 minutes? Even when I was single, me and my then boyfriend would offer to people who are having kids, married, do you guys need a date night? Well, go and babysit the child. So I think even before you have children, try to put yourself in those places of helping women, seeing when they need help and saying, would this help you? Because again, we don't know how to ask for help, which adds into this postpartum depression. There's too much expectation. I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a breadwinner. There's so much. That's, again, depression is you feel depressed. You have a burden on you, right? So when you seek ways to even help, a lot of times someone told me, don't wait to ask a mother, do you need something? Try to even see, they'll always need food. They probably need a shower in the first 6 weeks. If you can come and say, I'm going to hold your baby, okay? So you can go take a shower. Hey, I'm going to give you an hour. You go take a nap. Yeah. You don't need to ask, because she needs it. Trust me, she needs it. We have everything here. There's whole websites telling you what mothers really want that they're scared to say. You know what I mean? While you're single, look for those opportunities. I already heard you with some kids behind where you see someone needs help. I think also then when you become a mother, you may be more able to articulate when you need help, and also to even ask for it. Right? Because you've also put yourself in a position to help, right? So it's not just like waiting to have kids, and now it's like try to glean from the people around you what you can, because that's very important.
Yeah. So I didn't really talk about this, but I wanted to point out that men also struggle with postpartum, okay? Men also struggle because it is a new experience. For first-time fathers, they're probably not resting enough, right? Because they're not resting enough, their moods are changing. They have mood swings throughout the day, or just restless, right? Because the child, maybe they're sleeping during the day and not at night.
And we're assuming here is fathers who want to father, because what we also know about our culture and back home, a lot of fathers weren't providing in that way, right? So it's not right, wrong, or indifferent. But one thing I learned in marriage prepper is it's not that you may do what you just always saw. So if you only always saw your mother do diapers, do you even recognize that the man can do it?
All right. Well, as you've heard it, postpartum depression happens to African women just like it happens to women globally. And it affects the men, it affects the women, it affects the whole community. So be the community that you wish to receive, right? If that makes sense. For women who are unmarried, for women who are married and having children, for single mothers, do seek out for help, using the people around you to help you, to support you, because at the end of the day, this child may become a president someday, you know?
May not, but it's still important.
So, yeah. Thank you all so much for coming here and listening. Dina, if you could just say your social media handles and how people can reach you, that'd be great.
So before I want to say one thing for sure. Yes, men and women deal with postpartum together. It's true. But I'll say one thing. It's tough, okay? Someone asked, how do you find yourself after postpartum? The thing is, being a mom is a part of life. And the thing is, who you were is not who you are and who you're going to be. So you really got to give yourself the grace to unfold, give yourself the grace to grow. And that goes with both people. Okay. But you can catch me. I'm on Instagram at DeanaBspeaks.com, DeanaB Speaks. And I think Facebook, join Deana. And I'm mostly on Instagram. That's my place where I hang out. And so I talk mostly career stuff. But as a mother, this thing is also very important to me. The postpartum, the parenting, the kids, all of that. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming today. You guys know you can always find us on Emo Talk Show on all social media platforms, whether it be YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and what's the last one? TikTok. So please do check us out, subscribe, and like this video, and come back again for another episode, because Emo Talk Show is your place for all things uncomfortable in the African community, but yet so necessary to talk about. If you loved this conversation, please just tap the like button. I enjoyed it. I hope you enjoy it too. So come again next time. Love you all so much.